Hello everyone, this is Aqualodia, and yes, finally, I'm doing part 5 of this recording. I had some technical problems, and also, real life is a thing. Sorry for that. But yeah, I tried to do my best here, and first of all, spoiler warning, because this story takes place after the other 4 one-shots. Link is in the description. Please listen to them before this one, because this one in particular heavily relies on knowledge from the other one-shots beforehand. Second of all, I wrote this like a year ago. With other words, back then we had another understanding about Albedo. We didn't know about things like the second Albedo, about Albedo's heritage in general. So, if you find anything that is not consistent with the lore we have right now, blame it on that. I know some things are wrong with the context we have right now, but I really want to finish the story, because it's my baby. It's my baby. So, without further ado, let's get started. It all started out as a normal day for Xiao. In the last few months, things have quieted down in Liyue. After Xlapis passing, many demons and even some old weak gods tried to use the timing to take over the land and call it their own. Of course, the adepti, including Xiao himself and the humans on their side, had defended Xlapis' legacy. After a few months, things got much calmer. Xiao had even watched some demons run off to Inazuma and Sumeru. Seemingly, the word spread that Liyue was now a nation of humans who knew how to defend themselves, even without an Arkham by their side. But the adepti also helped them defend their land didn't make things easier for any evildoers. And with that being said, many enemies of Xlapis simply gave up and tried their luck in other regions. The days have been easier on Xiao. He was even able to pick up new activities, like teaching Ganyu about the duties of the adepti, or helping Chi-Chi collect fresh herbs for the pharmacy. There was also Albedo. From time to time, the alchemist said his name, and most of the time Xiao was actually able to follow the call. Of course, they still met for missions given to them by the traveler, but more often than not, they simply started spending time together. They would walk around Mondstadt, Xiao explaining what had changed since his regular visits 600 years ago, helping Albedo recreating these memories as sketches. Xiao really enjoyed Albedo's presence, and he would use every little excuse to spend his free time with the alchemist. He even told Zhongli once about the alchemist. His master from months ago had smiled, remembering when he had given Albedo access to the power of Geo, impressed by how little the man had cared since he has been working on an experiment at the exact moment. He reminded me of you. Tasks go first, then other people, and after that, there might be some time for self-care. The foreign god had chuckled. No wonder you two get along. Xiao smiled slightly when remembering these words. If he had to be honest, he might have to admit that Albedo was slowly becoming more than a friend. The more he learned about the blonde, the more enticing he seemed to be for Xiao. It wouldn't surprise him if Zhongli had looked through him and figured out what he was truly feeling, but he was thankful if that was the case, the god-turned-human had decided to not confront him. The adeptus was sitting in a tree, lost in thought and enjoying the afternoon sun, when suddenly a whisper rang in his head. Someone spoke his name, voice rough and weak. Without a second thought, he let the wind take him where the word was coming from. In an instant, harsh cold surrounded Xiao. He noticed snowflakes dancing in the soft wind around him, vaguely familiar shapes of mountains surrounding him. Dragon spine. Wait, did that mean that voice belonged to... Steps in the snow behind him. In a blink of an eye, Xiao raised a spear, pointing it at the throat of a person behind him. A young woman screamed in shock, big green ears flapping at the sides of her head. She was wearing typical Mondstadt clothing and had round glasses sitting on her nose. She was carrying something heavy on her back, which was what Xiao noticed next. On her back lay Albedo, skin white as the snow itself. He was breathing through his teeth, shivering and sweating. Something dropped into the snow behind the pair, a dark red liquid that smelled like something overcooked. The adeptus looked at the girl again. He could swear Albedo had described someone like her before. Sucrose. The green-haired gulped and nodded. Xiao removed the spear from her neck and let it disappear before coming closer and studying Albedo's face. What happened to him?
I don't know. I found him like this at our camp.
Sucrose nearly sobbed, obviously overwhelmed by the situation. Xiao placed one gloved hand on Albedo's cheek, feeling an immense heat coming from him. The man opened his eyes just slightly. Xiao saw not the concentration he was used to see in them, not the joy that sometimes showed itself and made his heart jump, not the fear or panic he was expecting. There was just cold emptiness, which was even worse for the adeptus. These are the eyes of someone who already gave up. Where are you taking him? I will carry him for you, Xiao said, trying to remain calm in the situation. Panic wouldn't help anyone right now. Sucrose seemed skeptical for a moment, but it was obvious that she was too weak to continue.
Mondstadt, to the church. I hoped Sister Barbara would know what to do.
Xiao nodded, walking around the girl and carefully taking Albedo from her back into his arms. For a moment one of his arms touched a very hot and wet point at Albedo's back, which made the alchemist cry out in pain. Instantly, Xiao moved his arm higher, muttering a soft excuse to the blonde. I can teleport there, but I have to hold him. Grab onto me if you want to come with us. Sucrose nodded, walking quickly around Xiao before holding onto his back. Xiao prayed that Barbados never removed the teleporter he had given Xiao access to once. He closed his eyes before the wind around them grew stronger.
I have to ask you later how you did that.
Xiao opened his eyes at Sucrose's words. They stood at the gate of Mondstadt, receiving some odd looks from the knights in front of it. It was not every day that 3 people suddenly manifested before them out of nowhere. Where to go now? Xiao asked the green-haired girl beside him. She seemed to be a bit out there, which was not uncommon for those who traveled with Xiao for the first time.
Dizzy, sorry. Through the gate on the other side of the city.
Sucrose grabbed the handle of a bridge beside her, closing her eyes.
I follow later.
Xiao nodded, running through the gate and into the city. He had hoped he would experience the new Mondstadt under Albedo's guide, but that had to wait. The adeptus held the alchemist close to his chest, using the fountain in the plaza as a stepping stone to quickly reach the wall in front of him and jump over it. People screamed in shock when he was dashing over and between them, and from the corner of his eye he saw some of them following him. They might have thought that he was here to cause trouble, but there was no time for explaining. If he was simply fast enough, he could just avoid them without losing words. Suddenly, a tall man with fiery red hair slid into his way, raising a claymore to stop him. "Hold it!" he yelled it, only to receive an angry "Get out of my way!" from Xiao. But before Xiao could summon his own weapon for defense, the wind blew under his feet, carrying Albedo and himself into the air and over the redhead. That's when the adeptus noticed his helper, Barbados himself, wearing different clothing, but still with these silly braids and a look of joyful mischief in his eyes. He hid the lyre away that helped him to summon the winds before following the 2 men from the shadows. Xiao was thankful for the unexpected help, carrying on his way. Not even 2 minutes later, he threw the door to the church open with a kick, receiving some odd looks from the people inside. "Sister Barbara!" A young blonde made her way over to him, instantly summoning a circle of water that surrounded the 2 men.
"Please come in."
Barbara opened a door, leading Xiao into a little back room of the church. There was only a single bed and a chair there, a few dried herbs hung on the wall, and a window allowed the evening sun access. Xiao slowly placed Albedo onto the bed, with his back pointing upwards.
Thanks for letting me in, sister.
The adeptus turned around and watched the animal Archon slipping into the room before Barbara could close the door.
Venti, you can't just...
It's okay, Xiao quickly interrupted. He can stay. Barbara looked a bit skeptical, but then sighed in defeat.
If you say so.
She walked up to Albedo, summoning a new water circle around him.
What happened?
I have no idea. Xiao leaned over the alchemist, for once taking the time to look for anything out of place. Only just now did he notice a dark spot on Albedo's back. I found him like this with Miss Sucrose in Dragonspine. She only said that she found him like this at the camp. Barbara listened while slowly removing the coat from Albedo. What they saw was even worse. The alchemist's top was pierced by a purple thorn that seemingly grew out of his back, oozing the substance that had been dropping from Albedo's body the whole time. After the top was removed as well, Venti's face twisted from anger and disgust. Not again. Suddenly, a knock rang from the door. Another blonde woman poked her head in, quickly analyzing what was going on. She also seemed to recognize the purple thorn. Is that? Can we keep him here without endangering Mondstadt? Venti hummed and thought, looking at the thing once over again. Maybe. If not, I would take him far away. What are you guys talking about? Asked Barbara, seemingly frustrated that she was asked for help, only to get ignored now. The woman opened the door wider. I'm sorry, sister, but you can't help him at the moment. Come with me and I'll explain everything. Venti and Adeptus Xiao will take care of Albedo. Xiao raised an eyebrow, surprised that the blonde knew who he was. She noticed his expression and smiled a bit. Sucrose came to me and told me everything. She recognized you from Albedo's tales about you. With that, she closed the door behind her sister, leaving Venti and Xiao alone in the room. The two animal users looked at each other. So, Xiao nodded his head to the thorn. What is that? You seem to recognize it, Lord Barbados. The Lord chuckled. Didn't we drop the formalities a long time ago?
And please, I go by Venti now, Venti the Bard. I would appreciate if you could use that name from now on.
Then he looked at the fawn again. Something like this was on the Valensbeck, a little over a year ago. It came from Durin and infected the Valen once he defeated the other dragon. But no idea why it got him now. Xiao sighed with frustration. How did you get rid of it? Venti shook his head. I was more a guide to the Valen than anything. The Traveler healed him. They have a power that was able to clean that corruption, but they are on their way to Inazuma at the moment. I don't know what we can do right now besides hoping that Albedo can keep himself under control until the Traveler returns. Xiao had at some point grabbed his own hair at the back of his head, pulling it slightly in frustration. That could not be it. He promised Albedo to save him if things go bad one day, and he was determined to keep that promise. The adeptus walked around the bed, looking for any clue on what he could do for the blonde. Venti watched him, a sad smile on his face. There's nothing we can do, Alatus. I don't believe that. The mention of his old name made Xiao even more furious. Albedo didn't even know his old name. He didn't know the man who taught Xiao to handle a spear. He has no sigil of permission yet. There was so much he still had to learn about Xiao, and the adeptus knew how much Albedo would give to receive that knowledge. He couldn't give him up, even if Albedo was strong enough to hold on for just a few more weeks. Every single second of his suffering was one too much for Xiao. He kneeled down by the bed, watching dark veins spread over Albedo's chest up to his neck, tinting the star there in a dark, disgusting purple. From there, the veins reached even higher, and finally started to dance over his cheeks. Cheeks. Head. Xiao jumped when a possible solution came to his mind, making Venti jump in surprise as well. He's unconscious. I know, and... It's like what I do with dreams, Xiao mumbled under his breath, rearranging Albedo on the bed. I will devour his corruption. Venti walked over, putting a careful hand on the adeptus' shoulder.
Xiao, this is crazy. We don't know if it will work, and even if it does, how can we be sure that it won't drive you mad instead?
Xiao turned around, grabbing Venti's hands and pointing at the mask on his bed.
2,000 years. I already suffered my own corruption, and I'm still here. I know that twice I nearly gave in, but it was your flute and his voice that helped me through these moments of weakness.
His voice twisted from a determined tone to desperate.
But, Venti, I beg you, if I am successful with helping him, please stay with us and help me with your music. I trust you with my life.
You do?
Most of the time,
if it doesn't include a bed or alcohol. Venti chuckled and started smiling.
Fine. I will help you, Xiao.
Xiao nodded, a slight smile hushing over his lips before he let go of Venti and moved onto the bed. Since Albedo's back was still hurt, he could only move him onto the side and do the same for himself. Hold on, he whispered softly before he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against Albedo's. Darkness engulfed Xiao. He felt nothing, not even gravity itself. This, he knew, was probably what was on Albedo's mind right now. The emptiness probably caused by the fact that Albedo needed to hold it together. The adeptus looked around in the empty space, finally seeing a small yellow light in the distance. He started running towards it. The mind space, even without ground, allowed him to travel onwards. He was faster than he thought, nearly felt like he got his wings back, who had helped him on his journeys all these years ago. Before he could think more about these things in the past, he had reached the light. There was ground here, and on it laid someone. The silhouette of a person told him that the light came from Albedo. That and the fact that it dimmed rapidly, while the purple of a thorn on his back glowed stronger and stronger. Albedo. One soft word was enough to make the alchemist notice him, but when he turned around, he pressed his hands on the ground, summoning yellow crystals to push Xiao back. Leave me alone! No. Xiao summoned his spear, cutting with ease through the stone like it was nothing. His will to help the blonde was stronger than Albedo's hope to be left alone. The alchemist made a painful noise that rumbled through the space, a sign that it also left Albedo's mouth in the real world. Xiao again moved closer, which resulted in Albedo moving backwards on all four. Xiao simply let the spear ram into the ground, summoning even more spears that spread like a fence around them, keeping their space to move in limited for now. The adeptus was for once glad, for the time that he had spent in the mind of other people, that he corrupted for his old master before Morax. Thanks to that, he knew now what was possible and impossible for him. I'm here to help. He kneeled down in front of Albedo, eyeing with worry that only the center of the chest and Albedo's face reflected the yellow light. The rest was already under the purple influence. Now that he thought about it, he had just noticed how he himself glowed teal in the space. Please stay away, I beg you. Albedo escaped an ugly sob, tears rolling down his cheeks. I know it will consume me soon. I don't want to harm anyone that you care about. Don't you remember? You already told me that. At the night of the lantern rite, Xiao tilted his head to the side, giving Albedo a soft smile. And what did I promise? Albedo gulped, needing a moment before responding. That you will kill me, except if there's another way to save me. And I believe that there is a way, but I need your help for it to work. The adeptus watched gladly how the corruption suddenly slowed down, spreading slower and slower. What do I need to do? You have to allow me to take your corruption from you. When hearing that, the alchemist jumped in shock. No. Xiao, I won't make you suffer instead of me. Albedo stopped talking when he realized how the corruption suddenly spread it even faster, nearly consuming his chest by now. Look at me! Xiao moved forward, grabbing Albedo's face in his hands, directing his head in a way that Albedo had to look at him. I know that you are strong, but you are not strong enough for this. Durin was not strong enough for this.
But I've been dealing with similar things most of my life. I have better chances to survive this than you do.
The alchemist's eyes are fixated on Xiao now, slowly showing something like understanding.
Please let me help you, Albedo. Let me save you, like you saved me when I couldn't let go of a mask.
There was silence for a moment. Xiao noticed the corruption appearing under his own fingertips now, nearly engulfing Albedo completely now. That's when he finally got a response he wanted to hear. Please save me. Without wasting another moment, Xiao pressed his mouth to Albedo's, feeling the corruption instantly traveling into him. The man in front of him started glowing again in warm yellow light, nearly making Xiao forget his own rising pain with his beauty. Once everything was out of Albedo, the adeptus removed his lips. He didn't know how much of the darkness was already visible on him, but Albedo's shocked expression said more than enough. But Xiao still smiled, feeling his day in Albedo's head coming to an end. We will see each other again in the waking world. When Albedo woke up, he instantly noticed the lack of pain. There was no thorn on his back, no corruption overwhelming him, no coldness surrounding him. He could tell that he was in Oneshot, and the moonlight from the window told him it was night. The next thing he noticed was Xiao beside him, shivering while a thorn has broken through the white fabric on his back. Oh, Xiao. The alchemist sat up, carefully touching Xiao's face. Can you make it? The adeptus opened his eyes, giving a weak smile. Sure. I had worse, to be honest. It's just this time the corruption is really... He suddenly jumped, grabbing the fabric on his sleeve. Really painful. Albedo sighed, not really sure if he should feel glad or even worse right now. Can I help you in any way? Just stay here, please. Just in these few seconds, his voice has gotten more tired sounding. Worried, Albedo laid down again, pulling Xiao in a hug that made it able for the adeptus to rest his head on the alchemist's chest. Xiao opened his mouth to say something, but instead a sudden sharp noise of pain escaped his throat. Albedo shushed softly to comfort him when the sound of a flute broke the silence. Albedo turned around in shock, only now catching sight of Venti, Oneshot's very noisy bard. The bard winked at him while he continued with his melody, still soft and soothing. Albedo mouthed a "What are you doing here?" in his direction. Venti shrugged and pointed a finger at Xiao. Albedo looked down again, seeing that the adeptus suddenly seemed a bit calmer. He sighed, brushing the ever's hair out of his face, which made him feel a slow rise in temperature. This was going to be a long night. Things got a lot worse later on. Even with the bard's music, Xiao still ended up screaming in pain from time to time. He had lost his consciousness at one point, only sometimes slipping out of it. These times, he spent with asking Albedo if he was alright, if the corruption was really gone from his system, that he could take even more on at the moment. Luckily, Albedo was fine by now, so he always kindly denied Xiao's suggestions. Sometime after midnight, Xiao's body temperature started to fall again. When Albedo told Venti about this, the bard stopped playing, instead grabbing a lyre. The last few hours have been hard on my air pipe. He joked with a giggle, leaning back while pulling the lyre strings. So tell me, how did the stuff infect you? Albedo leaned back a bit, playing with Xiao's hair while in thought. There was someone like the traveler. They looked very similar. When they entered the camp, I thought Sucrose had returned from collecting mint, but instead the stranger stabbed me in the back with something pointy. I cocked one look at them, then I lost consciousness. I see. Venti stood up, letting the sound of the lyre grow quieter. We either found a shapeshifter or a traveler will soon find out where their sibling disappeared to. He finally stopped playing and moved to the window, getting ready to jump out. Wait! Albedo stopped him. Why have you been here in the first place? Mandy turned around, an innocent smile on his face.
I have known Xiao for a very long time.
The alchemist raised an eyebrow. Really? The bard chuckled.
Really? You can believe me, don't worry. We have been a thing for a while.
Suddenly, everything was falling into place for Albedo. All the random things Venti seemed to know, his extreme love for Mondstadt and its citizens, his damn braids. Your Bob.
Shush! Don't ruin my little secret.
With a joyful
Yahoo!
The animal archon jumped backwards out of a window, leaving the two in the room behind. The next morning, Xiao opened his eyes, finding himself in a room in Mondstadt. His head rested on someone's chest, who he assumed was asleep by the slow breathing. The adeptus slowly raised his head, when suddenly the memories of the last day returned in full swing. He looked over at Albedo, who was still asleep and looked rather peaceful. Xiao instantly felt better, now knowing that he was truly successful. He was about to move from the bed, when Albedo suddenly mumbled something, now seemingly awake as well. Xiao chuckled softly, leaning down to the alchemist. Good morning.
What did you just try to say? I didn't quite catch that.
Suddenly, two arms pulled Xiao down, directly on Albedo's lips. The adeptus froze in shock before slowly relaxing into the kiss. When they parted, the blonde looked up at him, chuckling at the other's confused face. You already indicated a kiss with me twice. I have to start to catch up. Xiao shook his head with a soft smile. He could not believe that Albedo really excused his actions like this.
If that is the case, you still have one more to go.
Without missing a beat, Albedo pulled him down again. Both men knew that these kisses have nothing to do with platonic love anymore, but they couldn't care less. Leave me alone.
No.
Oh, mein Bein ist eingeschlafen, verdammte Scheiße. Animal Archon jumped backwards out of a window, leaving the two in the room behind.
Nearly done, nearly done, nearly done. Fuck yes.
With a joyful
Yahoo!
Yeah.
Yahoo! Wow!